This romance is abusive. And there were so many little messages about this book that just felt anti-femme. Then ethically, I can't recommend this author or anything she writes. I made a list and I'm checking it twice. It was bland. It was bland. I don't think that there's anything redeeming about this book. Some books enrich us. Some books bring us into a whole new world. They teach us things about others and ourselves. They pull us into their pages, sucking us into an orbit unlike anything that we've ever known. And sometimes we are radically changed for the better. And sometimes these books are just a waste of my damn time. I just don't understand how you're going to set out to write a beautiful, sapphic, female, queer, holiday, Christmas romance and then have it be riddled with internalized homophobia. We have talked about this for too long. I'm so tired of closeted queer peoples being shit on. I'm so tired of the closeted narrative at all. The idea that being closeted is something that you are for a minute and then you come out and now you're just out. That was just one of the many things that I hated about this book. Christmas and Mistletoe by Claire Lydon left me absolutely cold. I mean, straight up chilly. My vagina while reading this book sewed itself up. I then proceeded to get curtains tattooed on it just so everybody knows that I'm officially closed for business. I am leaning into my asexuality as a result of reading this book. I don't know if it's just me becoming more asexual by the second or if my tolerance for these certain tropes, these irritating, horribly abusive things in text, especially queer text, it's just going downhill.
I knew I should have stayed inside today.
But I am also about grace and learning and second and third chances. I am all about calling our community in. So this is my attempt to be very, very brutally honest about my issues with this book, why I think that it's homophobic, and why I don't recommend it to anybody. But I'm also going to talk about the things that this author did really well. I think this author has potential, but unless she corrects the things that she has written in this book in some way, shape, or form, even if it's just inside of her own self, then ethically, I can't recommend this author or anything she writes. Without further delay, let us just get started. The book, of course, that we are talking about today is Christmas and Mistletoe by Claire Lydon. This was a book that I found on Everend. I am really, really into the holidays. I love both holiday cozy romances and deeply disturbing holiday horror. We have the Holiday Book Rush, which is running from December 19th to the 26th, and tons of amazing prompts. It's a readathon where we celebrate not just Christmas, but other holidays that take place during this winter time as well. And as much as I love a TBR, as much as I love getting to books that have been on my list, I also simply refuse to allow the pressure to consume literature and push out content surrounding literature and read everything because we have FOMO prevent me from just finding a fun book on the fly and saying, fuck it, especially if it's an audiobook that I can just listen to while running my errands. It's nice to have a little break from my really dense horror reads or even literature books that have really, really dense themes or intense fantastical world building in my science fiction and fantasy books, that sort of thing. So this time of year, by this time I'm fatigued and I'm ready for that cozy break. And so Christmas and Mistletoe sounded perfect.
Why did I say mistletoe like that?
Who was that? Christmas and Mistletoe features two titular characters. One is Fran, and she is a music exec. Her job is to sign artists and find new talent. I love how the son just left me, just like my father, in the arms of the streaker. The trash can was the only thing that helped me as a child. She is all about work and no play. She wants to sign artists, further her career, and she's also really passionate about finding indie, smaller artists and getting them to stardom. She seems to focus her career mainly on women, and I think that that's really, really special. It's important to have execs out there who care about uplifting upcoming creators and care about their exploitation, right? That's not what we got here, but
we'll talk about that later.
God, this was just the most fake representation of the music industry I've ever seen. You know what irritates me? You know what I need to stop? We need to let go of trying to come up with the next new gimmick for the book. So this book felt very gimmicky in the sense of, oh, you have a hate to love between a music producer and a musician. So they kind of find two people in one career path, pit them against each other, and then that's the whole marketing for the book. And the actual research into that career feels very surface level. It feels clumsy, it feels stereotypical, and it doesn't feel intimate. That was one of my biggest issues about this book. It felt like this author was trying to think of really kind of creative, clever, oh, what hasn't been done and how can I make sure that this is like a flashy marketing thing, which there's nothing wrong with that. All about authors digging into their creativity, pushing the bounds of what is being done, what is selling, what they are seeing, or maybe this was an idea that just organically came about in her head, sprouted while she was listening to. I don't know.
And I also don't care.
My issue specifically is when that execution feels ham-handed. It feels very surface level. Like, we read a few articles, we watched a few videos, and we did our research, but that research, maybe because it's not from lived experience, or maybe it is not extensive enough, etc., whatever, just doesn't hit on an emotional level. So anyway, that's that character. Blonde, blue-eyed, kind of cold, distant, whatever. She's also reeling from her previous relationship with a singer named Delilah.
Hey there, Delilah. I'm sorry I didn't write a better romance.
Now, this is a singer that she signed and then promptly dated, but we'll get into that later. Ethics. Excuse me.
So sorry.
And because Delilah wasn't willing to come out of the closet, the relationship did not end well, much like the relationship with my father. On the flip side, we have Judy. Nope, sorry, her name is Ruby. Judy, Ruby, Tubi, Fruity, I don't really care. Honestly, that rhyme was the gayest thing about this relationship. Ruby is this tall, willowy, red-haired, green-eyed, folk musician, and she comes from the town of Mistletoe. It is like nestled in the countryside, and the whole town is obsessed with Christmas. It's a small town, it's a tight-knit community. Her family owns a farm where they sell Christmas trees, and business has been dwindling for many years. So every year her family is trying to come up with some new kind of gimmick in order to boost their business, something to be known for besides their Christmas trees. And this year it ends up being these really delicious artisanal crackers, for example. And every single year, Ruby goes back to her small town, even though her career is taking off, and she puts her whole career on hold in order to help out with the Christmas and mistletoe that her family is putting on. Fran is actually a really big fan of Ruby's work. That is why she goes to one of her shows in order to sign her, because she really believes in this artist and wants her to do well. But their initial meeting does not go well. Ruby is very put off by being approached, and she makes it quite clear that she has no interest in ever signing with a record label company again. She wants full creative rights over her music, her image, when she puts out content, that sort of thing. Fast forward 4 months later. 4? Gays can't count. When Fran's dads purchase property in the town of Mistletoe, and lo and behold, they meet once again during the magical season. They clash and they start to date, they have a romance, etc. That is the bare bones of the plot, right? I hope that this is painting a picture. Before this book gets eviscerated, let's have some positivity. Let's talk about some of the things that Claire did incredibly well in this book. First of all, the Christmas atmosphere is immaculate. The vibes are incredible. From page 1 all the way to the end, it is just warm and vibrant. You can feel the Christmas spirit everywhere, and it doesn't feel fake. The town of Mistletoe is the thing that this author did the best at, in creating this really intimate community where people know each other, help each other, care about each other, invest in each other's businesses, and yes, of course, have their own squabbles and competitions. The way this community really comes together, especially around Ruby, who is just getting started in her music career. They are so proud of her, and that small town feel was incredibly well captured as somebody who lived their formative years in a small town. It was the best of what a small town can look like, especially for queer kids and for queer elders and adults. And I think that that is really, really special. It is difficult to capture that small town feel if you haven't lived it yourself. So I was really proud of the author for that. The cozy, snowy British cabin vibes was also immaculate. As y'all may or may not know, I run a readathon called Camp Oregon. It's going to be running all through January. And it's a readathon where we read books that are set in cabins, set at camp. They can be horror or romances, and or they can be books that are simply set in the woods or feature protagonists who have to make camp due to emergency circumstances. So it's very, very easy to fit books into this readathon readathon and then you get that feeling of accomplishment. And even if so many things about the queer representation truly bothered me, I loved how queer it was. I really appreciated that we had queer male rep and queer female rep. There was a lot of representation for queer families. It wasn't just queer people hooking up, but it was these kind of stable, loving relationships that you could dig into. And I liked seeing that in the community. Of course, trans people were notably absent from the book, except for one random, weird, awkward comment about a non-binary snowman. And of course, the one time non-binary people are mentioned. It's a joke, but whatever. I'm just gonna let that go. I don't know if this trope has a name, but I'm going to call it the Grinch versus Cindy Lou Who trope. That is a hate to love trope that I can get behind, because Fran doesn't really hate Christmas. She just doesn't care about it because her work is more important, and she's also not as connected to her family the way that Ruby is. If you have quality book recommendations for that Grinch v Cindy Lou Who vibe, actually, no, that's a bad name for it, because Cindy Lou Who is a child, and that immediately implies like romance. Grinch versus Martha Mayhew. That's better.
We need to take a second to appreciate how obsessed with this white woman I was growing up. You know how Disney princes set expectations for girls to be very high? Martha Mayhew did that for me. If you were Martha Mayhew at 9 years old, I wasn't interested. The outfit, the aesthetic, the high femme power. Oh, she was everything. Oh my God, and the high standards. All I want is a woman with unreasonably high expectations that I can spoil and shower with all of the great things that she deserves.
We also love that there was a little competition element, a very small element, but it surprised me and I enjoyed it. I really like competitions in books. There is a really nice call out in the text of the way trolls attack fat girls and girls who are perceived to have bodies that are not ideal, specifically those that are in the music scene and in the public eye. And I really appreciated that the book at least spoke a little bit about fat shaming. It was weird because it then did a lot of feminine shaming, but we'll get into that later. I very much enjoyed that before the couple got together, they had a nice "what are we" talk, and it felt very healthy, mature. I appreciated it so much. And stability is the kind of thing that I really want in my romance. I, of course, love messiness, but I don't love abusive messiness. I don't love internalized homophobia messiness. What I'm really looking for is not this couple to have like a healthy, stable relationship at the end after having a very short whirlwind toxic romance. So if you are like me with your romances and you just want something that is healthy and cozy, and you like when they sit down and have boring conversations about things like consent and what are we and that kind of thing, instead of the author relying on the rampantly overused miscommunication trope. If you are like me in that regard, then you are not going to like this book and you should probably skip it. I think it's time to talk about the good stuff, don't you? I made a list, and I'm checking it twice, of all of the things that I really didn't like about this book, because we have a lot to cover, so we're just gonna go through it with our trusty dusty iPhone 13, which needs to be replaced.
Like how my father replaced me as a child. Rudolph the abandoned reindeer.
The audiobook is meh, and this wasn't a detractor, but it wasn't something that bolstered my enjoyment of the story. I have read so many books that I personally found to be mediocre that got a whole extra star because of the audiobook narrator's performance. This was not one of them. We have to talk about the anti-closet narrative. It's tired, it's old. I am so sick of closeted queer characters being portrayed as the villain of queer stories, and it happened in the most formulaic, told time and time again way that so many queer readers have spoken up about to authors saying, hey, this is not how we want to be represented, and this is something that is rampant in our community, and instead of leaning into that stereotype, let's push ourselves and let's see how we can show characters behaving differently. None of that is what we got. My biggest issue with the book, I have two biggest issues with the book, and the way closeted characters are treated is one of them. So I did a video a while ago, I think it was like last year, and I talked at length extensively about why the closeted queer character as a villain trope is deeply homophobic and needs to be stopped, and how it runs from classics to modern. This trope started in queer classic literature and still runs rampant to this day, which means at some point we need to call tea. We have to start calling these authors in, and sometimes we have to start calling these authors out and being like, yo, this is not how closeted people should be represented in our text and in our society. society. So Delilah is this artist who isn't out. She's not out to her parents, and she's really struggling with being public with her queerness. The music executive, Fran, knows this when she starts dating her, but Fran is never okay with it from the get-go. Still decides to go into the relationship, but brings all of this resentment. If you do not want to date a closeted person, that is okay. It is okay for you to be queer and want to be able to be out in public with your partner and posting photos and all of that. There is nothing wrong with that. But what you're not gonna do is get into relationships with people who are not at that point and shame them, drag them, and be surprised when they have all of this internalized queer trauma and internalized homophobia that they are still working through. And then trash talk them for not having been there, for not having gotten to the point that you are, maybe because they haven't had the same privileges and opportunities and abilities to feel safe that you have had in your queerness. And you're gonna make them the villain. It's unacceptable. I don't understand how this book got published. I honestly think this book would have benefited so much from having trans beta readers. I try not to make assumptions that are not backed up by fact. So mind you, what I'm about to say is not something that I have looked up myself, but I'm willing to bet money that the emphasis on beta readers, if there were any at all, were not brown queer people. Now, I was not concerned about the way that race was represented in this novel at all. I have no problems with that. But what I mean is that I think perhaps if we had beta readers that were in other communities besides white cis queers, perhaps we just would have had a broader perspective on the queer community as a whole. Because remember, brown readers aren't just important to serve as readers for representation, for racial representation. We need to be looking to reviewers of color not just for our opinions on race, not hiring them as beta readers just to check out skin tone, but because these readers can help all of us broaden our worldview and have so much more to offer. I could have let go of Delilah being the villain of this story if it hadn't gotten worse from there. Delilah is used as a tool of malice throughout the story, and even at one point tries to sabotage her relationship with Ruby. Again, why? I just don't understand why we're doing this. There is a moment in the book where the two of them try to be friends and Delilah is working on coming out. But again, with the way that this character was used, no, it wasn't enough. I was not impressed. 0 out of 0 stars. Honestly, the bar for this was in hell.
But saying Delilah's name still cloaked her heart in sadness. She'd wanted it to work, but it hadn't. My dads knew, and my colleague Damien. But apart from that, I was sworn to secrecy. It couldn't get out while she was trying to make it big, so we had to be super careful everywhere we went. Fran shook her head, remembering. It was more than tiresome. Plus, I've been out and proud since I was 17.
She's been out and proud since she was 17. So, Delilah's just weak and needs to catch up.
You have 2 gay dads. You don't have to hide who you are. Going back into the closet was hard. My parents hated it as much as me.
These politics are complex, and so it's interesting how she is talking about how being in the closet was an unsafe space for her, but she is punishing another queer woman for needing to be in the closet as a safe space for herself. Also, this woman didn't have the privilege of 2 gay dads. Okay, this person didn't get that. This person didn't have that. You have a massive head start on her. Why in God's name would you shame her? Delilah is also written to have promised Fran on several occasions that she was going to come out and take them public and didn't. And again, that is just a tired ass narrative. And I know that it is something that does happen. But again, that wouldn't have been so much of an issue if the entire way that Delilah's character was handled wasn't so horrible. But it gets worse.
Despite us getting along, it was never going to work. But I had to learn the hard way. I bet. Ruby paused. No wonder you snapped off her music earlier. Fran took a deep breath and shrugged. When we broke up, I asked to be taken off her team, and she endorsed it. But she's off on tour now, and things are really hitting the big time. I'm pleased for her, but she needs to be who she is. Come out as queer. Why wouldn't she?
Don't ever fucking tell somebody to come out. Are you kidding me? 101, what are we doing? We know that it is wrong for straight people to tell us to come out. We don't want to be outed. So you as a queer person to tell another queer person to come out and be who they are is not okay. They are who they are. This idea that when you're in the closet, everything that is sacred and true about yourself is hidden is also part of this tired closeted narrative where you are just a fake manipulative person and there is nothing good about your queerness until you come out. But let's remember that coming out isn't something that we do one time.
It's hardly taboo anymore. Maybe in the film or TV industry, but in music, people have always been able to be way more themselves.
People in music have always been able to be way more than... What people? Trans people? I want to know which people are we talking about? The rights of who gets to be out and proud in music, right? Let's talk about that. And the idea of saying it's no longer taboo, I think that it is very dismissive of the subcultures, even within America, where queerness is taboo and is going to be something that one has to fight deeply for. The idea that you're going to say that it is just simply no longer taboo and then also second guess yourself 1 second later and be like,
okay, well maybe in movies and TV.
How different are movies and TV from music? How can you say or even imply or suggest that these medias don't have bleed through, that they don't influence one another and the cultures that they are a part of? Okay, I'm getting heated, I'm gonna take a break. I'm better now. Not mentally, just I have makeup on. So I did have some time left in the audiobook before the book officially concluded. I wanted to start this video and give my thoughts to the book up until this point and then come back and talk about how I felt at the end. And the end changed absolutely nothing for me, but I do want to make a correction. Delilah did not intentionally try and sabotage Ruby and Fran's relationship by putting Ruby's music online. I can't remember if I said this, but Fran essentially takes a video of Ruby performing and then posts it on her Instagram, knowing that it will trigger her leading to stardom. She's talking with Delilah about it, and Delilah's like, oh my god, I really want to share this. That was actually more of an accidental thing, but it is noteworthy to say that at no point in the novel, from start to end, does Delilah's character ever get treated the way that she deserves by the author. Yes, you can say that it is a redemption, that she had a really big role to play in the getting together of Fran and Ruby, and I think that that's beautiful. I think the author really was trying to honor Delilah's character. I just don't think that the execution was good at all. I'm not saying that Claire set out to villainize closeted people through Delilah's character. I think that she was trying to represent the difficulties that come from being out and dating somebody who is closeted, and I think that that is completely understandable to represent. The issue is the way that Delilah was painted and framed throughout the entire book, even after the whole redemption thing. It was like, oh, well, you did a good thing. Oh, we're friends now, so it's all good. But I still think the damage had been done by that time with Delilah's character. The way that her closetedness was framed, the way that it was handled it throughout the text, all that stuff. I've already talked about it, so I'm not going to go into further detail. Another thing I really didn't like about this romance is that it was bland. It was bland. They were having some oatmeal ass sex. Their sex tasted like sugar cookies without the sugar. I was so bored. All that being said, I'm still so fucking happy that Delilah got to have some love and sunshine and see her time in the sun by the end of the novel. I love that Fran and Delilah, it was really important to both of them to bond and repair that bond even after their breakup. And Fran communicates that it's really important to her that Delilah still be in her life when she is having a relationship with Ruby. Don't get me wrong though, the sentiment, the idea is cool, but the execution was just absolutely disrespectful. So Delilah gets this girl a car and says, hey, if this causes problems in your relationship, you don't have to accept it. So instead of chatting with her partner first, or doing absolutely any critical thinking about what this may mean, she then chooses to sit her partner down. She sits Ruby down and just says...
So Ruby's like, wait, where'd you get the Porsche from?
Fran goes, oh, I got it from Delilah. Ruby and I are making the same face. We're like, cool, could never be me. And Fran's reaction is to say, if you have a problem with Delilah being in my life, then we have to end right here. being friends with my exes is really important to me. And I think that that's great. If that's a boundary for you, that is wonderful. Absolutely, say that, communicate that. But why are you such a fucking asshole? Ruby had not even had time to react to the car situation when Fran jumped in and immediately told her, this is how you are going to respond or we're done. There was no room for conversation. I just don't think that these two women are in a relationship. There is nothing about this relationship that clicks. Not the sex, not the chemistry, not the setup, and not the way that Fran treats Ruby. From page 1 all the way to the end, Fran continues to overstep her boundaries when it comes to Ruby's career. Ruby says point blank period at the very, very start of the book that she is not interested in stardom, that she likes performing for her small community, that she likes having complete autonomy and control over her image, the music that she puts out, all of that fun stuff, and also that she had a terrible experience, right, with being represented when she was younger. And then Fran proceeds to take this and spin it into her thinking that all music execs are evil, defending execs from page 1 all the way to the end, barely even cursorily talking about all of the reasons why artists are terrified of these executives, especially female artists. And then we have to get to the third act breakup scene. What's wild to me about this book is that every time Judy has a human reaction, Fran goes in and micromanages and controls it. And every single time, Ruby ends up apologizing.
Every single time.
So after Delilah and Fran have basically put Ruby out on the map, now all these streams are coming in, Ruby is feeling overwhelmed. Ruby says to Fran, hey, I feel like you are using me. I feel like you manipulated me. I feel like you're only sleeping with me so that you can get me signed. Fran does not take this well. And I'm sitting here like, but she's got a point though. And it's very clear throughout the book that Fran is interested in Ruby because of Ruby, not because she wants to sign her. But your actions, homegirl, are the reason why your partner thinks this. Because you have behaved consistently from the second you met this woman as if that is the end goal for you. And she would never have remained with Ruby. They would never have been together at the end of the book if Ruby had not finally, of course, agreed at the end of the book.
Oh, I'm gonna be a star now.
Now I'll let you sign me. Now everything's great and wonderful. If Ruby had not made that decision, if she had said, hey, I want to stay small, I want to remain in control of my career, I'm not interested in signing with a label, there's no way that Fran would have been with her. There's no way. Because at every point that she could, she called Ruby a coward. She bullied her. All of this to say, you know what would have been cool for this book is if Ruby had had absolutely any agency in any of this. But her agency comes after everybody pushing her to sign into a major label. And what is this the message that we are giving artists? If this book is for musicians, if this book is for musical artists and the industry, why are we not also at least centering the message of like, do what you fucking want with your music? I have musician friends who are making a living off of their music and like where they are. They don't want to be big. So it perpetuates this idea, this very toxic idea, that the height of any creative industry is fame, fortune, and widespread public recognition. But that isn't the case for so many content creators, for so many influencers, for so many musicians. And I think that that was, the entire book was a very, very harmful message for budding musicians. If you are a person who really, really wants to make it into that realm, I think you might really enjoy this book because you get to see this girl who gets to succeed in that way through the sheer force of her will and also help from her community. But my sole issue with this is that Ruby wasn't allowed to make that choice on her own. At the very start of the book, Ruby says that she doesn't want it. And it's not in a like a yearning, distant, okay, I kind of want it way. She's like, no, I don't want this. I'm traumatized. And what would have been romantic to me is if we had given this girl space to work on her fucking trauma and then decide what she wants to do with her career. This book is disgusting, you guys. This romance is abusive. Point blank, period. Immediately doing something pushy or controlling doesn't automatically make you an abuser. But Fran's actions throughout the entire book are abusive, from the way that she responds emotionally, from the way that she polices her partner's feelings, the way that she runs over them, the way that she silences her partner's concerns. I don't know if I fully finished this point, but I wrote, it feels like a small sneer against girly, sexy musicians. It only talks about girls being coerced and doesn't mention others that are simply wearing what they choose. And there were so many little messages about this book that just felt anti-femme.
And here's what I mean.
The author does take time to write about the hypersexualization of girls in the industry, how girls are supposed to wear tight clothes, revealingness, blah, blah, blah. But the framing of it is that every female musician who is signing herself to a label and is dressing this way is doing so because men are controlling her. And again, that's patriarchy. The idea that no women in the public eye are wearing what they fucking want and they're all just being controlled by a label, unless of course they're dressing conservatively, right, the way Ruby is, then they're not being controlled, then they are true to themselves. I don't think that there's anything redeeming about this book. That's not true. Like I said, the good things about this book are there, and I think that there's going to be so many people who read and love this book and that don't have the same issues that I have. But I'm telling you, the way reading this book and this romance made my skin crawl. It felt horrible and awful in my body, and these are not the kinds of relationship dynamics and romances that I want to bring into my own heart personally. Well, if you're going through the book with a microscope, of course you're going to find problems. What's funny is if the problems aren't there, I'm not going to find them. And I at no point in my whole life have gone into a book that I knew nothing about, picked it up and was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try and hate every page of this romance and find a way to shred this author's work. No, I'm just genuinely giving you guys my honest opinions and reactions to this book. I thought it was trash. I'm not saying don't read it, but maybe think about these things if you are going into it. And if you think that I'm bugging, just tell me to fuck off. And this is why I really wanted to make sure for this video I put in examples from the book so that you guys can see and make up your own mind. I am not interested in telling y'all what to think or feel. But don't tell me what to think or feel. Their relationship's abusive. I don't give a fuck what y'all say. It's gross. I've also written down any hope of me endorsing this relationship shriveled when Fran described their sex as awfully charmed. And the final thing that I have about Fran, I've written, honestly, Fran is manipulative, using her emotional position to influence Ruby. She never once second guesses her actions until it's too late. Here's the thing about Fran. Fran could have been fucking great. I don't think that there's anything wrong with having a character, especially a queer character, who is just hell-bent on pushing their partner, believing in them, creating together. I fucking love that. The most successful, beautiful queer partnerships that I have had are ones where our relationship is about us challenging each other, pushing each other, and bringing each other into the fold, helping each other reach our goals. But the problem is, those were my goals. Those were goals I said, hey, these are things that I want to work on in myself and in my partnership. And my partner had my back. And at no point in time during Fran being like, this is what's best for her, this is what's best for her, this is what's best for her, I know what's best, she's a coward, blah, blah, blah. Again, just like how Delilah was a coward. So it just seems like women who don't do what you want them to do are all cowards, but let me just shut the fuck up. My issue with that was at no point in her internal dialogue did she go, instead of doing that self-reflection, even if I had had a few lines, a paragraph, where she was analyzing her own behavior toward this woman, if I had had that, I would feel differently about Fran's character. I would hate her a lot less. But she couldn't even do that inside of herself. She couldn't even question for a moment if her controllingness was getting to the point of abuse, or if it was simply unhealthy overstepping her bounds. But she inherently sees herself in a place above this character, this girl. She sees herself as the more successful one, the one who is in a peak prime position, instead of seeing Ruby as the one who is in that position. Now, I fucking think it's great that Ruby ended the novel in a different way. I just wish that she would have been allowed to have more agency in that entire process. Ruby is a strong, brave, sensitive, soft girl, and I want to see girls like that, queer girls like that, doing exactly what Ruby does, but not because their partner harassed them to do so in damn near every conversation that took place in the novel. It's disgusting. Could never be me. I'd rather be single. All right, y'all, this honestly was cathartic. Christmas and Mistletoe really fucking pissed me off, in case you can't tell. The next holiday hate review, we are going to be talking about Kiss Her Once for Me by Alison Cochrane. So stay tuned for this. I have a playlist down below of my other videos where I talk about books that wasted my fucking time. Do not forget about the holiday book rush. It is going to be starting tomorrow and I'm so freaking geeked about it. And my Patreon is here for you as well. We have fun, amazing things happening in the Patreon in 2024. We have an event that is taking place this very week called Cookies and Cocktails, where we get together on stream, every one of us, and we make cocktail recipes, we bake cookies. Okay, just want to say really quick that the event was beautiful. It went even better than I ever could have dreamed, and we cannot wait to have many, many more.
Because Robin, Google is free.
We don't have a cocktail shaker. The rim of the glass like this. Okay, cheers.
Cheers.
It's delicious. It's so good, I'm not even gonna lie. We're probably gonna watch an episode of something food related, that kind of stuff. There's so much fun stuff on my Patreon and I'm really, really proud of the things that we've been doing over there. Tons of live shows, events. I'm going to stop raving and ranting and let you check out my Patreon, aka the dinner table, and all of the wonderful tiers that you can join for yourself. It is Hannibal the Cannibal themed and we love that for us. Be good to yourselves, be good to others, and we cannot wait to see you back here once again. Happy holidays if you celebrate.